You're listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast. Before we dive in to today's episode, I want to give you a quick heads up. We're going to be discussing a topic that's as important as it is sensitive: technology and pornography, which may not be suitable for younger children. So if you have little ears nearby, you may want to hit pause and come back to this episode at a later time. In an era where smartphones and the internet are integral to our daily lives, kids and teens have unprecedented access to a wide array of information. And unfortunately, that many times includes pornography. In this episode, we'll be discussing the realities of teen and kid exposure to online pornography, the potential consequences, but most importantly, how we as parents can approach this topic with empathy, education, effective communication, and lots of prayer. We'll be joined by two pastors who are also dads, who will provide insights and practical advice on how to navigate the challenges and opportunities that come with raising children in today's tech-driven world, ensuring that we equip our kids with the knowledge and resilience they need to make informed decisions that honor God. So whether you're a parent grappling with how to start this conversation with your kids in the first place, or you're simply looking to better understand the digital landscape your kids are having to navigate, then this episode is for you. So let's get to it.
Well, hello, my name is Daniel Reinhardt. I am the new student pastor at Beltway Park Church. I've been a pastor for going on 8 years now, and I have been married for 13 years, and I have 3 kids, 2 boys, and a young daughter.
I like how you dropped in there that you're the new student pastor, because that was my old job. I'm the old student pastor, one of them at Beltway. My name's Joel Wood. I am the lead pastor of a church in the Denver, Colorado metro area called Lighthouse Church. We're in Parker, Colorado. I worked at Beltway Park for a long time and am close friends with many people. Beltway is my home church. It is where 3 of my 4 children were dedicated, and I've got 3 boys and a little girl. My oldest is a teenager. He's turning a teenager here in July. He turns 13, and he's going into 8th grade. And then I have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So, I guess I'm the old one.
Do you know what I should have said is, hello, my name is Daniel Reinhardt. I am the correct youth pastor of Beltway Park Church. It just took them a long time to kind of get their rhythm. So I'm just glad I could be here. Well,
had to make some mistakes along the way, which is a great segue for us today.
That naturally brings us into mistakes that young people make. So today we're talking about pornography, the effects, internet pornography, anything that can be classified as pornography. Of course, the court said it's hard to define, but I know what it is when I see it. So let's just jump right in here in reference to teens and technology. So the two big ones. So Joel, I'll ask you this question and I'll jump in. What's something you would say to help parents understand the pressure that their kids are under with technology, especially when it comes to staying connected with their friends?
I think the first thing that's important for us to understand is that how young people communicate is different than how previous generations communicate. And this is something that I have thought has been important for a really long time now. But even as I have understood the importance of this, those communication methods have continued to change. Let me give you a great example of this. When I was a kid, we played a lot outside. I am a millennial. I enjoy technology, but I still love to be outside. And as a kid, I grew up playing outside. When I wanted to talk to my friends, I would call them when I was a teenager, or if I'd use technology, it was through America Online Instant Messenger. I didn't have text messaging yet. But as millennials have kind of gone into Gen Z, and really even Gen Z is now going to Gen Alpha, those communication mediums have changed. And so when I wanted to talk to my friends, I would talk to them. Still, like I'll directly text message or I will call my friends. I talk to friends on the phone still to this day. I go outside. I spend time outside with my friends. Whereas I can look at my son who plays video games. He plays a couple games online. We don't give him, free for all space, but he does play a couple games online with some of his friends that we know and approve of. And if he had it his way, he would spend all day playing games online with friends. Well, it's easy for a parent to look at a kid playing video games online and go like, hey, like, why don't you go talk to someone? Why don't you interact with someone? But they are. It may not be how you would interact with them. And online gaming has been here for a while. But one of the things that has not changed is young people feel connected with one another through communicating while playing games online together. So for parents, communication methods have changed. Technology is approached differently by different generations. A millennial like myself is going to approach technology different than my parents would. My children will have a different relationship with technology than I did. Their children will have a different relationship with technology than they did. And along with this, we have social media. We have digital communication. We have the advancement in AI now, and we don't even know what that's going to look like in the future. I mean, people kind of have some general idea, but our assumption as parents, we can't view a young person's approach to technology as the same as our approach to technology, because it's not. It's different. It's culturally different between us and them.
Yeah, the first thought I had was when you said. I totally agree with even just the relationship with technology. Even when people are raising their children, I think of, yes, you and I played outside when we were kids. And when our parents were kids, their parents sent them to the store to buy groceries and cigarettes. So there's just, things change. And I think oftentimes the frustration, what I've seen in my time in kids and student ministry is, and it's just habitual, parents understand their kids less and their peers understand them completely. And there is an intersect where parents disengage and their peers engage more. Therefore, we have an entire generation of kids that are completely led by themselves, their peers, and their feelings. And so that, to me, that's what I recognize first, is that our job is not to simply say, be home by 10 o'clock. As a parent, I think our job is to engage and try to understand, try to be on that level. Now, here's the thing. We don't have to be the annoying dinosaur that ruins all of their friend groups, but I believe that we can be involved in all of that.
Yeah, I think proactive understanding of technology, it doesn't mean you're going to understand it all. It doesn't mean you're going to understand everything that they enjoy or are into. But man, there's the apathetic approach where it's like, hey, it's too much, I don't get it, or it's their space, let's let them have their thing. And the problem with that is there's a lack of parental accountability towards your children in that. I mean, I think it was in 2001, Facebook admitted that they knew what social media did to teenage girls. Like, they have their own studies and they know the damaging effect Instagram has on teenage girls. And kind of the question after that is, what do you do with that? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you do with the fact that it is unhealthy? We have the most anxious generation of all time in Gen Z, right? They have more anxiety, more clinical diagnosed depression, and than any generation. And I think their parents, right? Even millennials, we feel this at some level too. Millennials and Gen Z are the most anxious and depressed generation of all time to ever exist. And some of this technology lends itself to that. And as parents, if we go, hey, it's just what they do, it's just the world that they live in, and we take this hands-off approach, then it's almost letting our kids swim with sharks, right? I mean, I'm not saying that we are going to understand, because I don't think we can understand everything through their perspective, but we've got to give some level of effort to be present. Because if we're not present, then we're not going to have influence in those spaces.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So you kind of moved us into another question that I have is, so low hanging fruit? What are effects? If there are good, which I think that there are some, but then what are the as well the negative effects of technology? So you talked about anxiety. One thing that I've seen, I remember being in school. Anytime the TV cart was rolled into the classroom, it didn't matter if they were showing an elephant giving birth to a baby elephant. It's like, oh my gosh, we have TV. We have TV during school. Like we've got gold. We get to watch TV in class. What we see in today's generation is that re-engagement is key for their learning, quite frankly, their attention. So now, even churches, we moved everything. We moved worship to screens. We moved, kids and youth stuff to screen content. And the reality is, if it's not re-engaging their attention, they are disengaging completely. You got apps like TikTok, Instagram. Everything is about how much hook can you create in a short amount of time, because that is what kids are after. So what are some other issues, Pastor Joel, that you see happening as kids are being immersed in a technological culture?
Well, the first thing is I don't think we're getting away from screens. Like it's not going to happen. Hey, for those of you at Beltway Park who are listening to this, if you are at church in the South Campus and whether it's Pastor Jeffrey or Pastor David, who's ever preaching that day, are you looking at the platform or are you watching the screen?
Yep.
Because I think most people will actually watch the screen. There's something about screens that grab our attention. It engages us. My kids, more than anything, they want to look at a screen. I can't look at my phone. Like if I tell, hey, no more TV today, TV's off, we're done with video games, we're done with screens, and I open my phone to look at an email, my kids will see what's on my screen. They want to look at a screen. So one, I don't know if we really are going to understand the effects of this yet. I mean, for a long time, people have been trying to talk about the damages it has. I mean, when I was growing up, it was violent video games. We have blue light glasses now because screens can damage our eyes. Our phones tell us about screen time. You watch certain TV shows and they'll even tell you, hey, kids, go outside. And so I think we know some things, and I think we're learning more and more of the impact of screens, but I also don't think we're getting away from screens. Now, I do think there's some benefits. Here's the thing. Right now, I know that those of you who are listening don't hear this or don't see this because you're listening to this podcast. I am on a screen in Denver looking at Daniel recording a podcast, right? It's a great thing that a screen allows us to do. And so it's hard because sometimes I think we get so frustrated. We want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But the truth is, where we are culturally, unless you're going, hey, we're disconnecting, we're moving to the woods, building a log cabin, digging our own well. Well, I don't think we're going to get away from it. I mean, think about it. I mean, how many of us, even as adults, we use paperless billing, and we no longer get physical bills in the mail because we look at our bills on a screen. And so, again, with that, there's benefits, right? My kids do not live in the same state as their grandparents, but they get to see their grandparents because of screens. I get to look at my children's grades whenever I want to through a screen. They get to connect. Like my son, Jackson, I love the fact that I can track him wherever he goes as long as he has his phone with him because of a screen. And so there are benefits. I have it's not my teenager, but it is my 10-year-old. His favorite thing to watch on television is documentaries. And I am shocked at how intelligent my 10-year-old son is. Like sometimes, like he just knows things that I'm like, no 10-year-old should know these things. Like you're very intelligent. All of it's because he has learned them through a screen. Now, I do think there's benefits, but I obviously think there's drawbacks too. I mean, what the amount of anxiety, right? The amount of comparison between ourselves and someone else. I mean, a lot of what we will talk about kind of the second part of this podcast is really the impact of pornography. And if you've got a screen that's connected to the internet in your pocket, you've got a portal to the world of just about any pornographic material you want to see. Mm-hmm. And so when we give our children these screens, when we go, hey, here's your first phone, like hold this, or even more than that. Here is a Nintendo Switch that's connected to the internet. Here's a tablet. Here's my tablet. No, you can, this is my old tablet. You can have it now. Every single one of those is a portal to a world that we don't want our children entering.
Yeah.
And if we're not proactive enough to go, hey, there are negative effects, and start having those conversations with our teenagers, or even younger than teenagers, about those things, it's like opening the door to the most dangerous universe that we certainly don't want our kids going, and saying, here you go, free access.
Yep. That's so good, man.
What about you? What do you see the impacts?
Well, yeah, I think I completely agree. And it's easy to say, well, I think of your son. I think of how quickly, I think of education. I think that people are able, and cheaper, they are able to quicker and cheaper receive education through online classes. And like even the brick and mortar style for almost all business is shifting and changing. And so there's tons of benefits, which is why, if I may, the enemy, as well as society, they use something that is so effective for good to pervert. That's all the enemy does, right? He imitates. So that's what we do, is we take something good and we see, I wonder how we could push something negative through this, because it's obviously an effective form of communication. It's an effective form of learning. It's an effective form of education. It's an effective form of simply talking to each other and catching up with your family. I mean, even just down the rabbit hole of not writing letters anymore. The lack of personal touch is something to be desired, but I think of how many people don't write letters, but they can contact their family members immediately and respond to emergencies immediately. A friend of mine got a call. His dad had heart surgery, or is having heart surgery, and he got on an airplane because he wants to be there for his dad. And that just didn't always used to be the case. And then the negative effects. Something that is really important to me that parents understand is, you touched on it a minute, and I think we can go further from here. It is not just a phone and the internet. It is almost every app you can put on a phone. It is game systems. It is game consoles. There is a way to hack or subvert parental controls in every electronic device with a screen nowadays. So it is not enough to say, well, I just don't let them have the internet browser on their phone. Do they have Facebook? Do they have Instagram? Do they, God forbid, have TikTok? Do they have Reddit? Do they have things that parents don't even understand or not even aware of? You can find access to almost anything. Tell me your thoughts.
I love the fact that you mentioned, right, the neutrality of the medium, because I do think that, I don't think technology is either good or bad. I think there is intent with how it is applied.
Yeah.
I think that I think that when I want to stay connected, right, to my home church of Beltway Park, I lead a church in Denver, but so I don't get to be home in Abilene often for church. If I'm lucky, once a year I get to come back to my home church, enjoy community, be around those folks, because I have the blessing to lead a church here. I have a blessing to have a new church home, but I still like to stay connected. And the only way I'm going to do that is through technology. I earnestly believe, right, when the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 9 talks about how I have become all things to all people so that a few may come to know Christ, right? I earnestly believe that if the Apostle Paul was alive today, he would use technology, because it's a way for people to know Jesus.
That's good.
It's a way for discipleship to grow, but it is also a dangerous medium. And while it can be neutral to good, it can also be neutral to evil. And, and I would love to say, hey, the two are balanced. But if I'm honest, I don't really think they are. I think probably more negative is impacting, but that doesn't mean we should throw out and dismiss the good. But I think that we need to prepare ourselves that just because the world is turning this way doesn't mean we release our kids to it. It doesn't mean we go, hey, here's your phone. You're 13. Here's your phone. You're old enough to have social media now. All of the social media agreements, almost all of them say they're 13. You got to be 13. But here's the crazy thing, right? Psychologists, I was reading this today. Psychologists, what's her name? Christine Egglesma. I don't know how to say her last name. I found this on a news article. She says that after studying the brain of young people, says 13 is probably not the best age for kids to begin getting on social media. Here's the thing. There are times I spend too much time on social media that I look at my watch and go, did I really just waste that amount of time scrolling through Facebook?
Yep.
Like, did I just do that? And if I'm struggling to manage that, we're going to take kids who don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex and expect them to be able to manage that. And they're going to give in to that again and again and again. And we're going to go, why do you spend all your time there? Because we've allowed them to spend all their time there. We've given them access without restriction. And I don't think most parents who are listening to this are going to think that kids should have no restriction. But we've given them access without really questioning, like, hey, what is the full consequences of doing this? So you may not like TikTok. I spend some time on TikTok. We post our church's videos to TikTok. I actually had a video that I made that I posted to TikTok. It went pretty viral a few years ago. I think it has like 3.2 million views on it now. And at the time I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, look at all the people paying attention to me. And can I tell you about that dopamine hit of watching that number go up and up and up, and how good that made me feel, and how I was looking for satisfaction in something so superficial. And then I opened the comment section. And it did not matter what I thought. Some people thought it was hilarious. Some people were incredibly mean. There are people that I don't know in places that I don't know where they live who do not intersect my life. And their thought about a video I made and posted to the internet consumed me. Their negativity consumed me. I am almost 40 years old, and I am still getting the dopamine hit from people liking. Like, it's a digital currency when people like or watch your stuff. And then I care way too much about what they think. What is a teenager? What's a 13? What's a 16-year-old going to do? How are they going to think? So, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you. My bad. What were you saying?
No, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I interrupted you, and then I let you interrupt me back, and so we'll just interrupt each other a couple more times. No, I think that it would be antiquated. Parents, grandparents of our generation, or at least my parents and my parents' parents. If you stare at a screen, it'll rot your brain out. It would be that would be a foolish attempt at collecting the attention of your child today, because it's not true, and it can be true. That's the hard part. Matter of fact, most public high schools are moving to screens. I mean, my kids, starting in like the 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, they're like, yeah, you have to have a Windows tablet whoosy-whatsy. You have to have whatever it is, because that's where the curriculum is uploaded. We don't do textbooks anymore. And they have them locked down, and they have all their parentals and safety controls, and so they think most of the time. But this is something not to resist, but it is something that we have to navigate. That's what I think.
It's interesting because my kids here in Denver, right, when they get into 5th grade at their school, they give them a Chromebook.
Yep.
And it is theirs. And when they move from middle school to high school, like, it is 100% theirs. All the lockdowns are taken off. They take it home. And as they switch school, that's now their computer, which is great in one sense. In another sense, at the end of next year, after my son moves from 8th grade to 9th grade, I got to go, okay, he now owns a computer that he can access whatever he wants to with it.
Yep.
Like, what do I now do? What filters, like what internet service providers, like what do I do to ensure that that he's got those levels of protection. And if I can kind of segue us into the next section, and we've kind of hit around it, because when we talk about the dopamine hit, I think that there is kind of the public ways that we get gratification through the internet, which is the social media. It is the currency of likes. It is the it is the engagement. The when we see video after video of things that we're interested in. But then I think there's also that secret dopamine hit, and it's the ones that we don't tell anybody about, that we clear our browser histories for, or that we open incognito windows on our browsers for, and that we don't want anyone knowing about. And here's the thing: as our kids are more tech savvy than the previous generation, it's going to be harder for parents. It's going to be easier for kids to get around a parent's restrictions, and it's going to be harder for parents to identify when their kids are falling into these really traps, but these places where pornography exists, where an unhealthy, unbiblical understanding of sexuality exists. And the more that I think our kids become aware of these spaces and enter them, the more they're going to fall into this cycle of shame, where they know what they're doing is wrong, but they, at some level, they like it, and they're trying to cover up, but they're not saying anything because of how shameful they feel like it is. And it's a really bad formula to add shame plus technological knowledge plus the desire to hide. And I think that, the reason that this is not an issue for some or most kids, this is an issue for just about every kid.
Yeah.
And how do we approach this? And how do we, as parents, or if you're listening to this and you're not a parent, or you're a grandparent, or you're just a church member, how do we pray into this? How do we look at this? So, Daniel, you're a youth pastor now. We're both parents. I have teenagers. I'm no longer a youth pastor. But how do you see this affecting? How do you see pornography affecting young people today?
Well, yeah, I think that it is probably. I think it'd be safe to say that it is a leading or the leading driver in the greatest anxious and depressed generation that we see in front of us, because pornography at its core is coping. It is internalizing. Instead of kids having a safe avenue, especially if shame is involved. Instead, when kids don't have a safe avenue to process their feelings, process their hurt, process their pain, their frustration, and oftentimes, especially kids who are maybe developing a relationship with the Lord, and especially kids that do not already have one, there is simply the wonder if God is big enough to care about their problems. Sometimes kids, they go, well, my parents aren't divorced, and I didn't see something traumatic when I was a kid, so what do I have to complain about? And that can be an early sign of a kid going inward. It's like, my life's pretty good, but I got a bad grade. I'm performance driven. I didn't make the team that I wanted to make. And no, that's not really a big deal to, my friend who had a parent overdose, or another friend die from suicide or whatever. And so pornography is the medicine of today's generation. Incorrectly so. It is the salve on our open wounds that is now festering into a sickness, a poison. It's comforting. It's secret. It's personally impersonal. It's just for me, but no one has to know. And that is the danger behind it. It's so available, but it is the ointment, it's the medicine, what a word. It is the medicine that kids are going to when they don't know how to handle life's situation, because it feels good. Talking to a parent who continually from the perspective of a student, doesn't understand is just frustrating. Kids don't want to go, listen, I want my parent to understand me, but I'm not going to keep repeating that conversation. I don't want to keep going back to that painful moment of my parents simply telling me to grow up, or their lack of understanding leads me to just go inward. Or even friends. It's the same thing. It's, the lack of feeling understood. Now, and that has been, and shame. Oh, you talked about it, the bad mix of something that's private and hidden, and shame. There's a story I tell of a friend of mine. When he was little, maybe 9, 10 years old, exposed to pornography. And back in those days, if you were looking at things that you shouldn't be on the internet, pop-ups. The pop-ups will get you. They'll come back and wreak havoc on the old computer. And so parent comes home from work, and there's pop-ups all over the screen. And of course, they know what happens. And it was he was a young man. He had sisters, and mom called him up to the office. His sisters were standing in the room, and she yelled at him, "Is this what you like to look at?" And he tells this story, and he said, the only thing that did for me was teach me how to hide it. I never, ever, ever wanted to repeat that moment of shame in my life. And so, no, did it help me with my addiction? It didn't scare me into salvation. It didn't do anything. It made me hide my pain. And I think that's what it's become in today's generation. Is it's almost like I think that movie that just came out, If, the Imaginary Friend, it's almost like today's technical version of an imaginary friend. It's always there for me when I need it, and it doesn't show itself when I don't.
Well, and it's crazy how quickly it gets its hooks in kids. And I say kids, like it's not a problem for adults too. So I read this yesterday. An article came out yesterday that talked about how Elon Musk's, who has the Starlink internet, right? And through Starlink, there's a tribe in the Amazon, an isolated tribe. They've been isolated for 1,000 years, and they're in Brazil. That last September, they got internet for the very first time. And now I don't know, I'm going to say it's not the entire, but now they are struggling with the pornography addiction because, they got the internet in September. And they're already struggling, the entire tribe, with addiction to pornography. And and we can go into kind of the details of the damages of pornography, how it gives you an unhealthy understanding of sex, the impact it has on marriages. It never makes marriage better, only worse. We could talk all about that. And I think that's there's a time and a place, and even other podcasts for that. Kind of our focus is on the parental side and the teenager side. But man, like there is one, it happens so quick. And how quickly, I remember the first time anyone ever showed me anything that was pornographic. I was in 8th grade, and it was before you could pull a phone out of your pocket that had the internet on it. I'm sure pornography was on the internet, but you had to go to a computer and search for it. The first time I saw something that was pornographic, I was in 8th grade, and a friend opened his wallet and pulled out a photograph that he had, I think, clipped from a Playboy magazine or something, and showed it to me. And that is not how that's no one's first exposure anymore. Young people at younger and younger ages are seeing it. And I think that the approach used to be like the bubble approach, right? It's this idea, let's put a bubble around our kids so that they will never, ever, ever, ever see that. We're going to have filtered internet. They're not going to be allowed to do this. They're not going to be allowed to watch R-rated movies. I remember when I was young or younger and started watching movies that had R ratings, right? There were some R ratings that was okay. Like if a movie was rated R for violence or language, like those aren't great things, but like you can see it. But if it was rated R for nudity, like you can't see it. And because I was in this bubble like approach that we, for all time, we have to put bubbles around everyone, our children, so they will never be exposed to anything that has nudity or can be construed as pornographic. Now, hear me. I do not want my children seeing anything like that. The heart of the bubble approach is good. The practicality of it, I think, is becoming less and less and less and less effective. Because if your kids aren't seeing it on their own phones in your home, then when they go to a friend's house or watch a movie with a friend, or, do you have streaming services? Do you have Netflix? Do you have Amazon Prime? Do you have HBO? Each one of those, there are ways around that at some point they're going to be exposed to something that, the media industry may just say is sex on TV to help drive ratings up. But the truth is, like, the content they're putting out there is at some level pornographic. It is sexual in nature. It is nudity displayed, and it is arousing to people who watch it. It's why they keep putting it in TV shows. And so this idea of never, ever, 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 while the heart of it, I think, is absolutely in the right place, the practicality of it is, hey, like, I'm not sure I know an 18-year-old who hasn't seen some level of nudity in either some media, either through searching for pornography on their phone or watching a TV show or seeing a movie. And so I think the approach of the bubble, I think we have to take the heart of that, and even some of the lessons, right? We do want to set up safeguards. We don't want our kids stumbling into it. We do want to make it, difficult. But I think that we can't have that without a bigger and better approach, which is not, hey, what do we do to always avoid this? But at some point, when your children do interact with something that we would consider pornographic, like, what's the response? Like, what is their response? How do they, like, what is going through their head? Is it shame? Is it secret? Is it hide it? Or is it, hey, let's open up dialogue and conversations with our kids so that when they do see something, when they are exposed to something like that, they feel the freedom to have conversations with their parents about it. And it's the communication piece. And I think what that's going to do, in your story about your friend really resonated with me on this, is we've got to get to the point where we can open lines of communication and not hide behind the shame and because the truth is, the bubble approach is failing. And we've got to learn how to have conversations about sin, conversations about repentance, conversations about the impact of pornography and sexuality. And what does sexuality look like in a godly perspective? And what are, what are the damages? How can it hurt without going, hey, you're a terrible person. Like, hey, here's the shame. Hey, here is why, you are less than others. And the shame is not going to be effective with helping kids have healthier relationships with Jesus and a healthy understanding of sexuality.
Yeah. That's so good, man. I think that you have kids that are a little bit older than my oldest. My oldest son is 9 years old, which is a year younger than I was when I was first exposed to pornography. And so, like, these are conversations my wife and I are having right now. I echo that our desire for his heart, man, is that he would never, I have 2 sons and a little girl, that they would never see that representation of sexuality because of how God designed it, which is completely opposite. However, what we're coming to grips with is when they see it, parents, I think that it is our job to be the expert. And the birds and the bees conversation, I liken it now to the conversation of salvation with our children. That is a moving target. It is not an age. It's not we'll talk to them about sex right before they are 15 years old or when they're 15. There is a good chance if you wait until they bring it to you for the first time to talk about sex, we're too late. We need to be the expert in their heart, in their eyes, and be proactive in the conversations, especially when we notice when they're so young, when they start to get curious about their own body, about like, listen, I got sons and I don't want to be graphic, but, they're just gross little boys sometimes. you know, you just sometimes you got to stick your finger up there and scratch and sniff and go, wow, okay, that's my brand. Yeah. I'm sorry that I said that. And I may not be able, they may have to edit this part out. That's going to get cut out. But parents, hear me. We gotta be the expert in our children's eyes, because then it becomes so safe for them to go, hey, I heard this word today for the first time and it sounded kind of funny. What does it mean? Oh, okay. Well, who said that? La-di-da-di-da. Well, actually, that is not really an appropriate word. Was it with your friends or was it with a teacher? Or, that it's just, there has to be the normalization of dealing. We are at war. Parents are at war with their children's sin nature, which means we need to be vigilant. We cannot be reactive. In war, you cannot only be reactive. You just can't. We need to be proactive. We need to be aware. We need to be eyes open on the wall, watchers on the wall for our children's sake. And so one resource I thought of, especially for parents with young kids, Joel, I'm not sure if you've heard of this. It's a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It's something Brittany and I used as the kids got a little bit older. Fantastic. I can't remember the author right now. I can look that up for another time, but it's a fantastic representation of it's a children's book of what to do when you see things that are beautiful and it's faith-based, and what to do when you see things that make you feel, because see, a kid's not going to know the first time they see an image, especially if they're very young, they may not know right off the bat if that is a bad experience that they just had. Their body will have a reaction though. Because of how we were made in God's image, there's going to be some kind of a curiosity, and we want them to come to us first. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The one I found, there's a couple actually. There's one for young kids, but it's by, I just had the author and they disappeared. There we go. Kristen Jensen. Kristen Jensen wrote one. But even this, right, the second edition, right, it's Good Picture, Bad Picture, Porn-Proofing Today's Young Kids. And I've heard of this book. I've not read it, but there's a young kids version, and then there's it looks like an older version for young kids. So I think those are great resources.
Yep.
Man, I know that we don't have a ton of time left, but I do kind of want to talk for just a minute about parents, kind of what to do when you find the discovery, right? When you find out, or your kids admit it or confess it, or you catch them, right? And kind of how to respond in a healthy way. And so there's kind of four things that I think are really important to emphasize. The first one is don't freak out. I think that, and again, back to the story that you shared, Daniel, right? Freakouts lead to more shame and more hiding. And we may want to freak out on the inside, but try as best as we can, right? Hey, we need to have loving, calm conversations. Your kids don't need to feel that your love or your affection is dependent upon their choices, especially when it comes to pornography. You love your kids even if they're struggling with it. But then I think, and maybe this is the next one, I think is maybe the biggest one, is I think too often, and I think we can probably speak from the male perspective or the father's perspective, and I don't want to speak too much for moms, but I feel like that sometimes I have talked to fathers who have felt ill-equipped to deal with this because they are struggling with their own shame, because they are struggling with their own addictions to pornography, because they are struggling with their own sin. And it is one of those things where you recognize you don't want it in your kids, but you can't get it out of yourself. And I mean, parents, like, I know many of you who are listening to this, you may have to deal with moments of repentance in your own life. And you may have to go to one of the men's ministry leaders at the church. You may need to have a candid conversation with your wife. You may need to spend more time on your knees in prayer, um, because when we are dealing with our own shame, it makes us ill-equipped to handle when our kids are dealing with that shame because we don't know what to do. Because we can look at our kids and go, well, that's bad. But in the back of our mind, we're going, man, but that's bad for me too. And so I think that one of the ways that we have to deal with our children is we have to deal with our own sin, and we have to run into repentance ourselves. Um, Kind of along those same lines, I think it's important not to hide the past.
Yeah.
We don't want our kids to realize that we don't sin ever. We are in need of repentance as well. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And there are age appropriate ways to have age appropriate conversations. They don't, your 3-year-old doesn't need to know your whole life story. But there are moments and times where bits of your story and your story of redemption, I think it's good for your kids to know that. But along with not hiding your past, is kind of the last thing, is we also don't celebrate sin. And I'm sure we've all known those people that, hey, remember back when we did this one stupid thing? Oh man, that was so funny. Don't celebrate sin. Don't hide your past, but don't celebrate your sin either. Don't make them envious of the times before repentance.
Yeah.
And man, I think if we can approach these conversations with our kids, we can approach having healthy conversations and normalizing healthy conversations about pornography and sexuality. I think that we're going to see kids who have healthier relationship with technology and are living in more freedom and less trapped in sin. I'll add another one. I said 4. I'm going to add a 5th one. If you need help from somebody else, if you need professional help, seek it.
Yeah.
Find somebody else who can help. I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm a big believer in the Freedom Ministries of Beltway Park. There's a lot of excellent resources that you can utilize to help you and to help you as a parent, but also help you if you're struggling with these things.
Yeah. So good. I think my final thoughts on this are, parents, remember that this is a spiritual as well as a physical battle. And if we only address the physical behavior, that's the freedom part that we're missing. The spiritual will it may go dormant, but it will run rampant at some point. And so it's so important that we remember that prayer changes things. Prayer is a way to fight the battle that we do not see over our children. Something that Brittany and I pray over our kids every single night is, Lord, would you set angels in their room to watch over them? Because we want to engage the heavenly place on behalf of our children. Angels, stand in the gap for my children tonight. Watch over them. God, give them good dreams of their moms and their dads, and give them dreams of their friends and things that honor you. And then I also want to just remind parents, I guess I share with, and if you know this, great, but it's really good to also have just a practical nugget. And so I think it's good to know, and it's funny, I say this because I remember the first time I heard it and I thought, why didn't I ever think of that? It is good to have parental controls on every single device with a screen.
Yeah,
absolutely. In your household as well. Did you know, and if you didn't, this is for you, that you can have Wi-Fi parental controls. You can literally make it so that anyone else on your Wi-Fi cannot engage inside of your home through your internet connection. Now, here's the reality, guys. There's a LTE 5WG connection where if they want to get it, if kids come into your home and they want to get it, they can. That's a part of us guarding our castle. And so I just encourage us to do so. Don't let them have screens in their rooms. That's just another easy one. Phones are, including their phones. It's like, no, if you're going to play a video game, you get to play it out on the TV for us all to see. If this is something that has begun to show itself as an issue in your life, in your child's life, don't give it a spiritual or a physical closet to grow in. It's just encourage them to live out in the light. So those are just some basic things that I think parents just know that you have the permission to do. It's your house.
Yeah, it's good. A couple other practical things. There are like where you can lock down the Wi-Fi. There is there's a Wi-Fi. I think it's a subscription, and I don't think it's internet, but I think it's a subscription and a router called Circle. The website's meetcircle.com that lets you very like fine tune what specific parts of the internet like your children and teenagers can access. The other is you mentioned parent controls. Man, I'll tell you what, the power of parent controls for iPhones and Androids, but really iPhones, you can lock down such specific areas of a kid's phone. You can let them have, as much screen time as they want with their Bible app, but you can lock down messaging at certain times. You can lock down, certain apps at certain times, and you can look and you can see how much time kids are spending in certain apps. And again, I think these are all tools that kind of lead to conversations. But the last like practical tip that I would also say is this. And only one of my kids has a phone. And right now his phone it's not a smartphone. Like I think he has like texting. It is a smartphone, but like it's through a company called MyGab or like gab.com or something. I remember it's a lockdown phone that he does not have apps or the internet. He can text, he can call, I think he can take pictures. And he has the Bible on it. And I think we allowed him, like chess. He can play chess on his phone. Other than that, he can't do anything. He forgets it all the time because he's bored with it, because it doesn't really, other than text messaging, like there's no engagement thing on it. And if that's a place you want to start, there's ways to start. Don't give him a smartphone to start. Give him a dumb phone. But one of the things that we did, and I recommend this with every parent, is create a contract. Just like we have to have the sex conversation, you need to have the social media and phone conversation too. My kid knows, and all my children will know this, that anything that is on their phone, I have full right to access. And at any moment in time, I can pick up their phone. And I had that conversation with them before. And you may think, well, that's an invasion of privacy. And I care more about my children's protection than I care about their privacy. If the house is on fire and I need to break down my kid's door, I don't care about their privacy. I want them to be safe. And by having those conversations ahead of time, especially when I'm paying the bill on it, right? Having those conversations ahead of time, right? We can enter into a place where we can have healthy conversations, but they know, right? This is a contractual agreement. They have a phone because I allow them to have a phone. I pay for their phone. And I even tell them, right, part of this is to keep you safe. It's to make sure you're having healthy conversations and not unhealthy ones. And create those contracts. Have those conversations before you ever give them the device. And I think it will help them along the way. So, Daniel, man, it's good to see you. It's good to talk.
So good to see you.
And we'll see each other here in like a couple weeks at youth camp.
Yeah,
I don't know
we will.
This may come out after youth camp, but we'll be at youth camp together.
That'll be a perfect time because I remember going to youth camps when I was a kid, being on fire for the Lord. Tell you what, that first night back from camp, that is the biggest test. That is you just got back from a spiritual encounter with Holy Spirit. You are exhausted, you're tired, and there's my phone, and it's looking good. So,
well, hey, thanks for the opportunity.
Man, it's great to talk with you.
Great talking to you too. And blessings, and we'll see you guys sometime soon.
Wow, you guys, this episode was educational, informative, and I took tons of notes. And so I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, head on over to our show notes. We're going to link everything that was mentioned there, all those helpful parental controls, and we're going to have an example of a contract that you can do. So I know the guys gave some practical tips in the episode, but I'm going to leave you today with just one more practical next step you can take when it comes to this conversation about technology and pornography. You're listening to this podcast, you probably have a desire to parent your kids to the best of your ability, right? With the help of the Holy Spirit. And so my encouragement to you today is to spend some time with the Lord regarding this topic and your kid. See what he has to say. We gave a lot of practical tips today and some wisdom, but God is the best father. He really is. And as much as you love your kid and want to protect your kid, he loves your kid more. And so I would just take some time today to sit before the Father and ask Holy Spirit if there is something that you need to do as a parent to take the first step when it comes to this topic about technology and about pornography. Are there conversations you need to have with your kid? Do you need to apologize for things that have been said in the past? What is your step as the parent? Don't apologize for wanting to protect your kid and your teens from the evil that's out there on the internet. I mean, your house, your rules. Remember, you get to guard your castle. But at the same time, there's this whole thing about the privacy issue. But as parents, of course, we care more about our kids' protection than we do their privacy. So don't apologize for going in these places with your kids. Just do so with grace and empathy, and of course not with our emotions, raging or high, but in peace. Go in peace and speak life, and only speak what you hear the Father say, and only do what you hear the Father encourage you to do. But that's my practical tip for today. I know that was kind of long-winded, but hey, we just want to leave you guys with some encouragement today, because we know that this is such a tricky landscape as our kids are trying to navigate this stuff too. So we hope you guys have a wonderful day, and remember, God is moving, and He's moving in your life and in your kids' lives too.